Andrade El Idolo needs to go, and perhaps so does Sammy Guevara. It's time for the AEW Dynamite review. Hey everyone, Brian Zane here. Thanks for watching the Dynamite review for October 5th, 2022. And thanks to those of you who have watched the two countdowns I put out on Wednesday, the dueling countdowns of sort, my best of AEW, my worst of AEW lists that I put out to coincide with the anniversary edition of Dynamite this week. And I'm happy with how those lists turned out. Unsurprisingly, the worst of countdown is doing far better numbers-wise than the best. And I don't know if it's because there's a predisposition to negativity on YouTube, or just maybe because they were released in the same time, there was only enough notification bandwidth for one of them. I don't understand necessarily. I tried my best to also guide people to the best of video because I was afraid that was going to happen, but I think both videos, I like how they both turned out. I liked the feedback I've been getting on the two of them, like as far as things I might have missed. Thinking more about it, I think the Brody Lee tribute show probably belongs in the best of in terms of the way they I think it's probably the classiest tribute show to a fallen wrestler I've ever seen since my time as a fan. The CM Punk MJF feud. I admit I really forgot about that feud in the midst of the CM Punk controversy at All Out this year and also MJF's absence for several months. I kind of totally forgot about that storyline existing, but when I thought about it, yes, it is actually probably one of the best pieces of business AEW's done. I think on a personal preference, I would still put the Hangman Page arc above it, but in terms of just like complete storylines that had a beginning and an end, absolutely I would put Punk and MJF up there with it. And boy, speaking of stories, what is it with my luck lately where I'll post a video and then within like 24 to 48 hours, something about that video or something I said ages poorly because of something that happens in real time. Case in point, I'm talking about Brawl Out and maybe Tony Khan can use this as a learning tool and a turning point. And then as soon as I say that, we've got this big incident with Sammy Guevara and Andrade El Idolo. Over the last several days, those two were tweeting at each other some nasty things about he said this and they said they did this and everything. And then Andrade says, I'll see you Wednesday. And then AEW apparently, more details have come out about this story as night turned to day. It sounds that AEW tried to tell both guys to de-escalate and not fight anymore. Andrade apparently didn't listen. He allegedly threw the first punch on Wednesday. Sammy allegedly didn't want to fight. He was trying to back away. And so what happens here is Andrade is sent home. The story is, the rumor right now, is that Andrade is trying to get out of his AEW deal and trying to force a release. But now AEW is saying, you know, we're not doing this. We're going to send you home if you do anything. They warned him, and they tried to, and he tried to call their bluff. And then they said, no, we're sending you home. We're not firing you. So now Andrade just looks like a massive idiot in all this. But I don't really feel that bad for Sammy in this either, because Andrade may have been the aggressor in this scuffle in the arena, but Sammy was still an active part of things getting to the point that they had. Either AEW needs to hire a social media manager or they have to have a class or something, because Sammy, he really helped escalate this to a point where there was probably not going to be another way out of this, it feels like. And it's not the first time Sammy has gotten into confrontations with people in the locker room, and it's not the first time he has generated controversy with things he has said or done. And I feel that as much as Andrade shouldn't be part of this company anymore, I mean, I don't blame him for wanting to try and get out of the contract. Honestly, the way they've been treating him and booking him, like, yes, go back to WWE if you can. Do whatever you can. But I think it's just so stupid that, like, only one of them was sent home because they were both involved in it. And I think if the logic you had was, Kingston and Guevara both got to be suspended for their thing, or if both, Kenny Omega and the Bucks and Punk and all the agents are all suspended for what happened, then how come only one guy was sent home for this particular thing? Honestly, if Andrade does not want to be there, or if anyone doesn't want to be there in AEW, then I think Tony Khan should allow them to leave. I think he should grant releases to the people who don't want to be there and who are actively going to just bring down the vibe of this locker room and everything. One day after Tony Khan says, oh, there's great cohesion in the locker room, then this whole thing breaks out. And so that's why I think at the very least both should have been sent home. And I dig Guevara's work, work, but I mean, is he worth all the drama? Is he good enough to put up with all the drama that he causes, is my question. And I think that when you're a young company and you're trying to do all the right things, it's hard to see what Guevara has done and gotten away with, and just like, why are we still hanging on to him? Why are we still putting him in this uber prominent role? But anyway, we'll talk more about the Sammy and Andrade situation as we go through the main event. But let's begin with the first match of the evening. MJF wrestling his first match in a little over 4 months as he takes on Wheeler Yuta. These guys do have a lot of great chemistry from all their work together on the indies. They bring that up on commentary. There's this one move that MJF does, and I've seen him do it before, but it looked particularly devastating on Yuta here. That powerbomb into the backbreaker that runs parallel with the leg as opposed to perpendicular. That looks really cool. Great moment where these two have like a lot of like rolling back and forth pinfall attempts for a while. Kind of reminds me what I would play like one of the 2K games online, and my opponent and I kept hitting the counter button on the roll up for like 5 minutes. That was a glorious time. I wish I had that on camera. Yuta wants to go for a top rope splash. MJF rolls away, gives him the finger, takes the splash anyway. I thought that was great. Eventually, MJF comes back, hits the salt of the earth armbar to make Yuta tap. And so MJF wins here. Afterward, you've got this real big push on the code of honor tonight. A lot of handshake attempts are happening throughout this evening. And this is the first one where Yuta wants to shake MJF's hand. Looks like he's thinking about it. And I was expecting he was going to do the babyface tease, like, ooh, should I? And then he heals on Yuta. But then instead, you've got Lee Moriarty attacking Yuta from the Firm, and Stokely Hathaway's there. MJF looks upset by this. He doesn't want Lee's help or Stokely's help, but then you've got Stokely giving him the Dynamite diamond ring, MJF begrudgingly putting it on, but then you've got William Regal, who was on commentary this whole time. He gets up and you see him putting on the brass knuckles, which got a huge pop, and so he gets in the ring. MJF powders at the end. I love that little moment at the end, but I think the whole match itself was really good, really great way to start the show. They show a hype package for the main event, and then we see the Jericho Appreciation Society backstage cutting a promo, and wow, the evolution of Jake Hager. This week he is wearing the purple bucket hat that Chris Jericho gifted Daniel Garcia last week, and then Garcia rejected, so it's Hager's now. I think that he should really just own that and make it his own. Jericho warning Garcia that everything that Garcia knows, Jericho taught him, and then when Sammy Guevara speaks and puts the last line on this promo, everyone boos it. It's very audible, and that's kind of the running theme that you'll be seeing with Sammy tonight, is the treatment of him. Then we go to Jay Lethal versus Darby Allin, where Lethal's made it clear he wants to win, and he wants to wrestle on his own, no help from the outside there. So this match is pretty good. I think it's a good match of styles. Lethal is, I think, skilled enough that he can work with just about any style of wrestler and make it work well to a good match here. Lethal working Darby's leg. I love that top rope dragon screw he hits at one point. Darby blocks the lethal injection, and he ducks out of the way of the lethal injection, which I thought was cool, to hit the code red. Near the end, you got Satnam Singh and Sanjay Dutt, who show up on stage. Lethal is trying to wave them off, but in the process, that allows Darby to capitalize and hit the Last Supper and get that locked in for the pinfall win. And so that was a big win for Darby. We get this moment here where once again you've got like Satnam and Sanjay kind of encroaching in the ring. Darby is trying to talk Lethal into going to the light side. You don't need them, this and that. So he offers the handshake, and then Lethal offers kind of a begrudging, intense handshake really for a split second before he leaves and goes back with like the other two guys who are kind of upset at him for doing that. So it's interesting development there. I wonder if this is the process of turning Jay Lethal face, because I think that run he had with Singh and Dutt, like, it's been okay, but what's it really yielded him? I think that Lethal at this point would be better to, if, like I said, this episode, last week's episode, feels like a real big kind of like preview to what they might be building for whatever ROH is, and if this is kind of their way to building toward, Lethal being a face again in this new ROH, then, that's a good way of going about doing it. And here's more indication this feels like a very ROH-themed episode of Dynamite. You've got the Embassy. Prince Nana, he's there. He's taken over Tully Blanchard's stable, basically. He replaced Tully. So now he's got the Gates of Agony, and he's got Brian Cage in his employ, and he sings We're in the Money, which is pretty funny for that hype package. And then we've got the TNT Championship. Brian Cage back on Dynamite for the first time in forever, challenging Wardlow for the belt. It's a big, beefy Hoss fight. The only difference is Cage can still move like a cruiserweight. He hits a big, like, Hurricane Rana, does the Tiger feint kick, but like Wardlow catches him. These guys are just like, you made two creative wrestlers and you both just maxed out their stats and their attributes and made them both super jacked, but they can do all the big moves. And it's like, that's what I got the vibe from watching this match. And it was a lot of fun as a result. In the end, Wardlow gets out of Cage's powerbomb attempt and hits not one, but 4 straight powerbombs to the big man to pin and win, retain the championship. But then after the bell, the Gates of Agony run in and they beat down on Wardlow. Then Samoa Joe comes out and makes the save, but he's beat up. Then FTR make the super save, and then the Embassy powders. And it feels like we're going to get an 8-man match out of that at least. But man, as far as this match goes, definitely felt like Brian Cage put his working shoes on, and he and Wardlow had a great match here. What a great return to form for Cage. Again, seeing two guys built like water heaters just beating the hell out of each other, I think is great content in any era. So I was definitely happy with this matchup. Dr. Britt Baker has got an announcement. I assume she's making this announcement because she is a doctor and therefore the most qualified to talk about it on Dynamite, where she says that Saraya is still not cleared to wrestle and that by default it is still her house, her being Britt's. We go to a 6-woman tag match up next. You got Willow Nightingale, Toni Storm, and Athena taking on Serena Deeb, Penelope Ford, and Jamie Hayter, who is still getting massive babyface pops for her entrance here. Early on, there's a point where the babyfaces are triple teaming Deeb in the corner, and the referee has to make a concerted effort to turn himself away to avoid seeing it. Lots of moving parts in this match. It's pretty well done overall. Saraya is on the outside with the faces. Dr. Britt is with the heels. At one point, Rebel is on the outside. At one point, Rebel grabbing a crutch from under the ring and Saraya stopping her. Willow hits Deeb with the pounce. Everyone getting their spots in by the end. Willow ends up hitting a Dr. Bomb on Penelope Ford to win the match for her team. And I thought that was a very good action by the two sides here. Everyone got time to shine. And then we get this face-off with Britt and Saraya in the ring, and they get physical. Saraya's throwing hands and everything. She kicks Rebel in the head, says this is her house and whatnot. So, like, how not cleared is she? Because the fact she did get physical, I think, was a shock to see. For a while, it seemed like, oh, if she, like, takes a bump or does anything, she could die because of her neck. But the fact she's able to throw down and stuff, I think that's a good sign. Hopefully, she will be cleared to wrestle in the near future. But I think the fact she got physical here with Brett is a good sign. We see Rouge and Jose, the assistant, backstage with Private Party, and they basically tell Private Party to shape up and help out Rouge next time, or else, you know, something's going to have to be done, something's got to give. Jose brings up, oh, we saw Matt Hardy with you last week. He was doing some contract tampering, which I feel is a phrase that is so 2 weeks ago, you know, even 3 weeks ago. It's just one of those wink and nod things that you know they threw in there because that was a story at the time, and then it's just like, why are we doing it though? Why? Like, most fans are going to care about that. And then we go to our next segment where the Acclaimed present National Scissoring Day, and this was a great moment. First of all, good Lord, the crowd in DC, so many like homemade giant scissor signs. That takes a lot of work. All the different scissoring signs. There was a South Park Wrestlers version of the Acclaim. That's how you know Attitude Era is coming back, baby, because you got the South Park Wrestlers. Anthony Bowen's at the podium first. He defines scissoring as a show of friendship, like a handshake. He calls himself the Sultan of Scissor as well, taking some shots at Sneaky Swerve and Keith Lee. In his words, Billy Gunn then takes the podium and awards the boys the Scissors to the City, a giant golden pair of scissors, which that was hilarious. Caster then has a speech, talks about, you know, the parallels of his father having won a Super Bowl in Washington many years ago, and now he's bringing a championship to Washington, D.C. as well. That was pretty cool. Very just humble, down-to-earth babyface promo. Talks about how scissoring brings everyone together. It doesn't matter if you're black or you're white, red or blue. He says, we're wearing pink and everyone looks good in pink. And they're about to do a bipartisan scissoring in the ring, in their words, when then Sneaky Swerve comes out. A great line by Swerve where he tells Billy Gunn, hey, now there's a whole other decade where kids can get suspended from school for wearing your shirt. I thought that was great. He wants to challenge Gunn to a match for Gunn costing them the tag titles a couple weeks ago. But then Mark Sterling comes out and he suddenly wants to represent the Acclaimed in their fight against Swerve. And he says, I want you all to scissor me. But then he gets beat up and then Gunn accepts Swerve's challenge. They do the big scissor and that's where it ends. This was a fun segment here. I thought it was just a great showing of, you know, the babyface Acclaimed. They are over. It is working. and I think it's just so cool to see. Like, and then their speeches, I think they were well delivered. They weren't botchy promos. They were just like from the heart. It felt good. It felt natural, and you could tell the crowd was behind it all the way. And, you know, what a beautiful message of scissoring. It's such a silly gesture. The beautiful message of friendship and togetherness behind it. I can get behind that. Backstage, we see Madison, Rayne, and Sky Blue being interviewed, but not for very long before they're interrupted by Ty Mello and Anna JAS, and they mock Sky Blue for her lack of charisma, and she hits them back saying, well, y'all can't wrestle. And it seems like we're going to be in a tag team match play-up between those four in the near future. And then we get Rouge versus Hangman Page up next. This is a great match, and ooh, Rouge is a naughty boy in this thing. He attacks Page and chokes him out with the camera cables on the outside. Jose getting a lot of shots in as well. That's a big story here, is Jose getting his licks in as kind of a manager or a corner man in this thing. Great back and forth, great hard-hitting physicality in this thing, and I love the finish where Rouge is going for the bull's horns in the corner, but Page gets up and he hits a big-looking buckshot to win the matchup here. After the match, private parties show up. Looks like they want to help out Rouge afterward, but then Jon Moxley makes his way through the crowd and into the ring, and he confronts Paige. The heels have powdered by this point, but now Moxley is saying, I've been waiting for this for 3 years. We've kind of like, we've each beaten everyone there is to beat in AEW except each other, but he's been wanting this fight since the very beginning, and he wants a match with Paige in 2 weeks in Cincinnati, his hometown, literally where he grew up smoking and drinking by the arena, and he wants to face Paige in a match to prove that he is the top guy for certain in AEW. Moxley goes to leave, but then Paige kind of goads him saying, well, if you've been waiting 3 years, why wait any longer for a match right now? And then, you know, it's a big pop. Moxley gets in there and he says, like a lot of people here, you're young and you're saying a lot of stupid shit right now. And so he warns him saying, I'm letting you off this time, but, you know, in 2 weeks it's going to be on, basically. You know, I think this was a good promo segment. I think that Moxley, even though he was intense, didn't bury Paige in this one, and Paige kind of showing some backbone here was also very good, and just kind of ending in a very intense way for two baby faces to have this promo. And I'm looking forward to that matchup, which Moxley will almost certainly win, but I think it'll be a good match. We're backstage with Willow Nightingale, and she says she wants to challenge Jade Cargill now for the TBS title, and like magic, Jade and the baddies just immediately appear in the shot. They mock Willow for having lost to Jade twice already, and Willow's come back as well. You may have beaten me twice, but do you know you can beat me a third time? And I might be the one in 38-1. So showing some gumption is Willow. We find out that match is going to happen at Battle of the Belts this Friday, and just me personally, I have a bias here. Please let Willow win. Then we go to our next match as Luchasaurus takes on Fuego del Sol. It's a squiggity squash. Luchasaurus wins pretty handily. Wants to do some more damage, but then Jungle Boy Jack Perry runs in with a chair to break things up, and Jungle Boy on the mic telling Luchasaurus, you are my best friend in the world. I trusted you, but you broke my heart because you decided to go with him being Christian Cage, who's there. And he says, I'm going to break you piece by piece, name the time and the place. Christian on the mic and saying, you know, we could just leave you in a pool of blood and piss right now. And it cuts to just the right moment for Jungle Boy. The reaction he has at the line blood and piss, I thought was hilarious. But Christian basically says that match is going to happen next week in Christian's hometown of Toronto. So that should be a very interesting match, very emotionally charged. Jack Perry and Luchasaurus here, and where is that sneaky Christian Cage going to get in there? Then we go to our main event as Daniel Garcia and Bryan Danielson take on Chris Jericho and the still in this match Sammy Guevara, and that's the real story of this thing. It's a good match, but the crowd is aware of the backstage drama with Guevara and Andrade, and they're letting him have it, man. Every time Guevara gets in the ring, they're booing him. Nobody pops for his big moves. They're chanting "fuck you, Sammy," and then when he does a big spot, they'll chant "you still suck." Like, they have definitely turned, and there's a guy in the hard cam with like two signs, one saying Sammy Dramara and one saying hire an HR expert. So needless to say, like, the word's gotten out, and Sammy is being, you know, he is getting the brunt of this from the fans. And knowing what we know now, that Andrade ended up being the aggressor in this thing and it wasn't so much Sammy who got involved in the physicality of it, it does make you feel kind of bad for Sammy, but then when you remember, oh, he also did kind of escalate this on Twitter, so it's like he's, again, not totally innocent in this thing, but knowing what we know now about the particular physical altercation that happened that day, it's like I think a lot of the anger is maybe somewhat unfairly pointed toward Guevara with this one. But like I said, this is still a good match if you ignore that stuff here. You've got this moment where Garcia and Jericho have a great exchange after a hot tag. Danielson is powerbombed through a table on the outside, and that allows, when Garcia has the Dragon Tamer locked in on Guevara, Jericho is able to hit Guevara with the belt. Even though Garcia making the move toward the ropes to get himself set up for that felt very inorganic, but it is what it is. Guevara gets the pinfall. He's carried off on the Jericho Appreciation Society's shoulders as, you get this moment here where Jericho and Garcia share a look where, tough break, kid. And that's where the show ends. It's bad enough that we are less than a month removed from what happened at All Out with CM Punk and the EVPs and everything, but then this dust-up escalates on social media. AEW, to their credit, apparently tried to tell them to tone it down, de-escalate, just put that shit to bed, and then they thought that was going to be enough to keep it tamped down. I think they should have put more precautions in place to keep Sammy and Andrade separate if they were concerned that it was going to happen like this. And again, it just shows like this is stuff that could have been nipped in the bud so much sooner, and it could have been just stopped at the source and never been a problem, and we never would have heard about it. But nope, it's because people don't have social media managers, they don't have a social media class, and that's how we find out about this. Even if Andrade was the aggressor in this circumstance, I still think that Sammy bears some of the responsibility for letting it escalate to the way it did, and he should have also been sent home. I don't get why he gets this special treatment here, when meanwhile you got Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks sitting home. They're still suspended. I don't know why Sammy gets to work the main event here. Sammy's staying in the main event, even knowing what we know now, that he wasn't like the aggressor in the fight. It's still really tone deaf because you're rewarding him still for the behavior that got it to that point. And not to mention, he's already been in another high-profile backstage scuffle and other assorted headaches due to things he was doing in the moment, and also things that would be dug up from years before. It's like, he's all these headaches and all this drama. Like, he's good, but is he that good to be worth all this stuff? Like, stop rewarding shitty behavior. That being said, my grade for this week's Dynamite is a B. I thought that the in-ring action was great all around, except the squash match and everything. And the pacing was pretty good for all the matches they had advertised here. Again, felt very ROH-tastic with the talent they used in a lot of the matches. A lot of references to the Code of Honor made. Maybe this is some world building for whatever ROH TV product they may or may not be having in the future. I'm not sure. Didn't feel much like an anniversary episode for AEW in this one. It's like another episode of Dynamite, honestly. Like, you can't show some highlights? Like, anything to reflect on the 3 years you've had on the show, on TV? Nothing? No? Okay. I felt that it could have had a little more pomp for the anniversary show. But besides that, I thought, it was solid. And that's the best way I can describe it. And again, just keeping Sammy in the main event, even if he wasn't like the one throwing the punches and everything, I think it still sends a negative message. But what did you think of Dynamite this week, folks? What are your thoughts on the Sammy Guevara-Andrade controversy? Do you think Sammy should have stayed on the main event? Let me hear it in the comment section below. Little programming note. I know that Extreme Rules is happening this Saturday. Unfortunately, I have an obligation that is going to keep me booked all weekend long, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so I will not have time or the ability to watch Extreme Rules as it happens. I'll be having a review for that coming out on late Monday or early Tuesday is when I can get that to y'all. But don't worry, because I did postpone the classic pay-per-view review this week. Halloween Havoc 1990 was moved from Wednesday to make room for the countdowns, and now it's going to be dropping on Saturday morning as a make good. So I hope you enjoyed that little review and see a bit more about Sting and the Black Scorpion. But until then, folks, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.